Hazur Khilafat after Hazrat Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam,
Yes.
it only lasted for 30 years. Whereas
33 years or 30 years? What was it? 30. 30, yes, that's right.
Whereas it was Khilafat of the Khatam al-Nabiyyin, the highest order of the prophets. Now, I have read the book Muslimanon mein Ikhtilafat ka Aghaaz, but that does not it would not satisfy a man that the taqdees of Hazrat Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam was so strong. Against that, his Khilafah didn't last even 30 years. And this split came when the Sahaba and even his own one wife was still alive. Does it not, of course we don't believe that, but could not that lead a person to believe or to doubt the taqdees or Qudsiya of Hazrat Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Why within such a short time the whole structure was shattered?
Do you think his Khilafat has ended there?
No, Khilafat didn't end, but it ended in a real sense.
What I mean to say is, if you differentiate between Khilafat of Hazrat Masih Maud wasalam and Khilafat of Hazrat Rasul Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then this question would be valid. But Hazrat Masih Maud wasalam is the Khalifa of Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam. As Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam was a Khalifa to God directly. So Hazrat Masih Maud wasalam was a Khalifa to Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It is his Khilafat which even after 1300 years distant from being a 1300 year distant from him, came into being through his Quwwat-e-Qudsiyah. This is what Hazrat Masih Maud wasalam has been writing in his books and delivering in his sermons and speeches, that all that he possesses is a sign of the power of goodness of Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam, power of purification of Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So, no distinction should be made between Khilafat-e-Ula and Khilafat-e-Saniya, that is the second phase of Khilafat. This also belongs to him. And in between also there was a Khilafat which was termed differently, but it was still a spiritual Khilafat. Hazrat Rasul Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam prophesied that at the head of every century, Allah would raise some who would purify faith and put it back into the original order. Yujaddida laha dinaha means all this. That if any erroneous ideas have been added or some important things have been subtracted, Allah will raise someone who will remove the erroneous later additions from the faith and who would put back what has been taken out. So put Islam in its original shape, back in its original shape. Such person or such persons would continue to appear, particularly at the head of a century, new century. So who were those people? They were again Khulafa. They were Hazrat Rasul Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam's two successors, spiritual successors. So Khilafat-e-Rashida ended, that is to say, the first Khilafat, the first phase of Khilafat ended, but Khilafat did not end. It continued in some form or another until it was rehabilitated and re-established in the same pattern as the first Khilafat, the first phase of Khilafat was established. So this is again according to the prophecy of Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that when promised Messiah would come, Summa takunu khilafatun ala minhajin nubuwate. These are the very words of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then the same type of khilafat which I am leaving behind, which the prophets leave behind, that would be reinstated and re-established. So it is his khilafat, it is not ended. And this time, according to the prophecy of Hazrat Masih Maud, it is going to continue intact for at least 1000 years. So as far as Quwwat-e Qudsiya goes, that is an unending process. It would not end till the end of the time. The power of purification of Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is a live power. Yet a time would come that people would refuse to drink from this source of life. If that happens, how can you say that the drink, that liquid has lost its power? If you don't drink out of it, you have lost touch with that fluid, not that the fluid has lost some power. That can happen. That has happened before, and then that may happen again.
I am not satisfied there yet, sir.
Of course, you may not be, but then you explain further what is that is irritating or agitating your mind.
My point
Means
is,
it is as simple as just, a child's play.
why within a short period that the continuity of that thing was broken when the Prophet himself was Khatamun Nabiyyin, only 30 years. People started fighting him.
How do you relate this with Quwwat-e Qudsiya? This is no measure of Quwwat-e Qudsiya. You have invented a wrong measure for measuring the power of purification, and then you apply that measure which has no authority, no ground, to the Quwwat-e Qudsiya of Rasul Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. First establish the measure. As far as the Quwwat-e Qudsiya goes, I have established that even 1400 years, 1300 years after, it is seen effective and alive. At the turn of every century, it is witnessed to be there. So from that, one conclusion is drawn, that Quwwat-e Qudsiya is not dead. And that conclusion is completely contrary to the conclusion you are drawing. So there must be some other reasons for something else. Your conclusion is wrong because the measure you have chosen to measure Quwwat-e Qudsiya is a self-made measure which has no authenticity. Neither a logical authenticity nor an authenticity based on books. That is the book, So first of all, establish the credentials for your measure. Then you will proceed further and see how you can be satisfied. How did you imagine that Quwwat-e Qudsiya of a prophet must have a direct bearing with the Khilafat that follows, in the sense that it should continue for a long time? How did you infer that? First establish this. What is Quwwat-e Qudsiya?
Well, Nabi Karim Sallam or Masih Maud, who's his gurus, is, or put it this way, their own, that strength of and purity which should have traveled on and on and on. Obviously, it was ended in a way after 30 years.
No, how do you say that? On and in what form? The point is that did piety in itself die out the moment the last Khalifa was murdered, Khilafat of those of Khilafat Rashida?
Yeah.
What do you say of those companions of the Holy Prophet who survived that period and lived much long afterwards? And those holy and pious men who were born in Islam all over the world. And what about Hazrat Imam Hussain and also those who were martyred along with him of his family at Karbala? Did they suddenly become unholy at the time when the institution of Khilafat died out?
No,
Is that your concept?
No, they remained holy, but
Who had made them holy?
that Nabi Sallallahu
And who kept them holy? At every crisis, at every trial of life, they referred their actions to the concept of Muhammad Mustafa Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and on that touchstone, they applied their decisions and followed whatever was the answer of that touchstone. What was the touchstone? Sunnat-e Muhammad Mustafa Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So it worked. It continued to work.
it was in pockets, sir.
No, en masse it continued to work. It remained effective whenever somebody applied his decisions to that touchstone. It always worked. And if somebody did not apply, it could not force people. This is why I illustrated my point by an example. If water is pure, it is not defiled. And if water has life-giving properties, then those who go and quench their thirst with that water would gain those life-giving properties. But if somebody does not go to the water, does not drink of that water, and he dies, will that inference would be correct that the water has lost its properties?
No.
No? So, Quwwat-e Qudsiya alone is not enough. Even if it is alive, it will not be enough. And in whichever direction Quwwat-e Qudsiya has been ignored, in that direction you will find danger despite the fact that Quwwat-e Qudsiya is intact. Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's Quwwat-e Qudsiya is not a magic word, is not a myth. It is a reality, and a very vast reality for that matter. His Quwwat-e Qudsiya means his Sunnah. The concept which he has left behind of right and wrong, good and evil, which was practiced by him once and demonstrated by him that it is practicable, it is not something supernatural. That concept is Quwwat-e Qudsiya, plus his prayers, all that go towards making one Quwwat-e Qudsiya. But it is applicable also in parts. For instance, Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam behaved in a certain manner in a certain situation. And there are thousands and thousands of situations which can be added to that one situation. All that as a whole makes Quwwat-e Qudsiya. But if you ignore one single situation, in that particular event you would lose touch with the life-giving property of Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and become partially dead in that matter. The rest of the Quwwat-e Qudsiya will not be able to save you because you have ignored it yourself. This is an independent phenomenon. So in the sphere of authority and acceptance of authority and obedience, if you disregard the Quwwat-e Qudsiya of Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, you must suffer. So if you do not disregard, but an overwhelming majority among you disregards, then the consequences cannot be avoided even by those who obey and who have live contact with that part of Quwwat-e Qudsiya. So there are so many factors to be examined. And if you examine them in detail and come to analysis, then you will realize that it was not the failure of Quwwat-e Qudsiya which resulted in that debacle. It was failure of the people, of certain types of people who had in fact no opportunity to be trained by Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. They overnumbered those who were trained, and the weight of their follies told heavily upon Islam. So it had nothing to do with Quwwat-e Qudsiya of Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. What resulted was, by the lack of those people the inability of those people who had joined Islam from the periphery areas, had heard of Islam by hearsay and had no knowledge of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They had not come into direct touch with Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam's Khilafat Qudsiyah. It was they who brought about that debacle. Is that not correct?
No, it's correct.
And now you satisfied?
Yes, sir.
Oh, thank you.
May I be allowed to say it?
Please. One sound. Just a moment. After Chaudhry Ahmad Mukhtar
Assalamu
Karachi.
Surah, I read one revelation of Hazrat Muslim Maud. Hazrat Muslim Maud was thinking over it, why the first phase of Khilafat was so short-lived. Then revelation came to him and a banner was shown to him on which it was written, their temperament became moribund and anarchical.
Their temperament became
moribund and anarchical. They had become anarchists. They wanted to destroy Khilafat. They had no cooperation with the Khilafat, no attachment with the Khilafat.
No, that is correct, but that's not the point which he is raising.
Yeah.
The point he was raising, which I understood after he explained himself further, was this which, and this was responsible for the confusion, that if Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam had purified a certain people, why in so short of a time after his death, they reverted to the original position of non-purification. From that he inferred, and if that had happened, his inference could have been worthy of consideration. From that he inferred that if that was the case, then the strength of Quwwat Qudsiyah of Ahmad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was not strong enough, was not powerful enough. He purifies a people after a very long struggle, and when he closes his eyes, suddenly the same people revert back to the original evils, and the color he has imparted to the people is not lasting. That was the inference he was drawing, but when I understood, then I realized what he meant, and then I drew his attention to the fact that it was not the same people who were responsible for the breakdown of institution of Khilafat. It were the people who were born in the periphery areas of Islam, in Egypt and other places, who had never seen Hazrat sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who were never once purified. Only they had accepted Islam in name. They crowded Medina at that particular time, and they didn't know what institution of Khilafat was. So that is correct, there is no contradiction to what you are saying, but his question was different. So because they had never once been purified, they remain as unholy as they were previously. So because they came in overwhelming numbers and they overwhelmed the situation, the result was that the institution of Khilafat could not be kept intact because of those evil influences from outside.
Doesn't it come under that verse, وَمَنْ كَفْرَ بَعْدَ ذَلِكَ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْفَاسِقُونَ?
But not this in this instant. It was not the companions of Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam who had once believed and then denied, who were responsible for a breakup of Khilafat. It were not those people.
Yes.
They are those who are said to be in the Holy Quran to fall under the category Raziyallahu anhum wa razu anhu. Raziyallahu anhum wa razu anhu. They are the people who were fully pleased and satisfied and contented with God, and God was pleased with them. So there, if you say kafara ba'da zalika, this is exactly the Shia stance. What they say is, exactly the objection raised by him applies to the Shia philosophy, not to the Ahmadiyya philosophy. The Shias believe that although the companions of the Holy Prophet were purified during his lifetime, but the moment he shut his eyes, they fell back to the original position of uncouthness and unholiness. So they are the ones covered by this verse you have quoted, according to the Shias. The result was, according to them, it came much earlier than the 30 years. According to the Shia philosophy, it happened immediately after the demise of Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. They forgot all they had been taught. They undid whatever they have been told to do. The result was that they denied and fell into the categories of those who disbelieved.
Alhamdulillah.